Hello, and welcome to Thought of You, a podcast where I, Amelia Ruby, and my co host
Taylor Elise Morrison.
meet every month to chit chat about the things that we have shared in our group chat in the previous weeks. We have been making this podcast for over a year now, and we love talking to each other and sharing some of the things we're seeing out in the world with all of you. So I thought that this month I'd kick us off by just asking Taylor, how was your Valentine's Day weekend? What did you get up to celebrate love?
It was quite lovely. I This was my 15-year anniversary, dating anniversary with my husband Matt, and so it felt very just nostalgic. We were thinking about, so we started dating my senior year of high school and thinking about all of the ways that we've changed and all the things that have happened. So our weekend kind of kicked off on Thursday. We went to this local women's sports bar called Babes that's actually owned by one of the people who sits near Matt at his season tickets for the Chicago Sky, which is our local WNBA team. And we'd wanted to go and we just hadn't made it there yet. So it worked out to go there as part of 831 Stories author chat with Kat Disabato, who seems to be a Chicago local. Like, I'm pretty sure her mom was there, and it seemed friends who have known her for a long time seemed to be there. And they talked about the book Rooting Interest, which was very cute. It's a WNBA love story. It was co-hosted by this group of women who play basketball in Chicago at this sports bar where there's women's sports all around us. And I felt really thankful to have a partner who, one, genuinely loves women's sports. Like, before Caitlin Clark came here, he has been in it in the beginning. When it is March Madness, we are watching what's happening with the women and what's happening with the men. We have basketball all year because of the NBA and then the WNBA, and now also Unrivaled. And so I just felt grateful to have a partner who genuinely values women in sports. It also was really fun because this was the first time that we've read a book together / in parallel. So I got us the subscription for 831 Stories. So I had the physical copy. He was listening to it on audio. And then we've had all these health issues with our dog. So we go to this vet that's like almost an hour away. So we ended up listening to the last bit together in the car. And it was just so fun because I feel grateful that I get to share that with him and as part of our partnership. He also is much more, I guess, aware and curious about the writing structure of romance novels. So he'll be like, oh, of course, this trope is playing in here, or this thing has happened. And then again, because this was a book about basketball, he's like, oh, that seems like that's meant to be this player, or oh, that's funny, blah, 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 blah. Just things that I did not understand or relate to. So that was Thursday night. And then Friday night, we went our separate ways. And then Saturday, actually, Valentine's Day, we had we're both introverts. That's important context. And also, I started a part-time job at a startup where I am doing so much peopling. Like, my job is basically to manage a bunch of stakeholders. And I was planning on like ordering food in for Valentine's Day. And Matt had other plans, lovely, cozy plans. So in the beginning of the day, we did our own thing. Again, important because we're introverts. We like to have our own space. And then at night, he cooked some delicious dinner for us and just had a few low stakes activities for us planned. So we watched the final episode of the previous season of Bridgerton so that we could watch this season together. And then we did a few cards from We're Not Really Strangers, if people have played that game. And then I bought this adorable limited edition Uno deck, and it just brings me so much joy. We brought it out a couple weeks ago with a friend, and I was like, this is just so fun to play Uno and to have the cards be gorgeous. And so we played a couple rounds of Uno. Actually, we played best out of 5, and we put a bet on it. So that was our evening at home, and it was just so lovely and cozy, and I felt really seen and known, that it didn't need to be this extravagant thing where we had to go outside and be overstimulated. He knew exactly what I needed. So that was my Valentine's Day.
That's also lovely. I really appreciate how it suits each of your like temperaments and interests and the ways that you spend time together. My Valentine's Day also, perhaps oddly, started with a women's sports theme. So, Friday night, JJ and I had a little pizza party, watch party with my family where we watched the new Queen of Chess documentary, which is about Judith Polgar, who is the first woman in chess to break the top 10 of all chess players, and I think still the only one. It's wild how male dominated chess is and how just like sexist and misogynist a lot of the culture is. So it was really exciting. This movie had premiered at Sundance, but then was on Netflix, I think, the week after. And so we all got together and we had pizza and we watched it. And JJ like filled in all this additional detail, or like every time there'd be a game on in the documentary and it'd be like a moment of suspense, I'd be like, JJ, does she win? And then JJ would tell me so I wouldn't have to worry about whether she would win or not. So that was a really fun thing to watch. And I think also just like get more context on her career and chess, which of course, for listeners who don't know, my partner JJ is a chess player, works in chess full time, edits a chess blog slash publication for the US Chess Federation. So chess is JJ's like entire world. And it's nice when there are these like cultural entry points for me and for us to have that conversation. So that was the start of our Valentine's Day. Taylor, have you heard of this documentary or even seen it?
No, I haven't. And I'm like, I need to watch that. And Matt and I were actually just talking about how he likes to watch chess YouTubers. So this might be something we watch together.
Oh yeah, I thought it was really well done. It was like enjoyable to watch, and it's basically kind of framed around Judith Polgar playing Garry Kasparov, who's like one of the most famous, formerly Soviet chess players. So yeah, it was really interesting to enjoy that together, and I highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. You can watch it anytime. And then on Saturday, actual Valentine's Day, we sort of kept with the sports theme, but dropped, I guess, the women. That sounds horrible. But we did a double feature. We watched two movies. We watched F1, which is like the Brad Pitt racing movie that came out on Apple TV, or I think they put it out. And then we watched Fight Club, which is not really a sports movie, but unless you consider fighting sports. But this was not official fighting in Fight Club, obviously. And I have to say, F1, I do not understand how I got nominated for Best Picture. I thought it was like interesting to watch the racing happen, but like not a great film. I truly don't understand how it ended up with these Oscar nominations. And then Fight Club, I think does hold up. It's a great movie. It's really interesting. It's got a lot to say, got a really dark tone. And even though I like knew the twist, I still enjoyed rewatching it. So that like, I don't really understand how I ended up watching like two films made about by and for men on my Valentine's Day, but that is what we ended up doing. I guess maybe kind of ironically. And then on Sunday, we went to a very cute Valentine's themed improv show that one of my friends was hosting at a local cafe. So that was cute and fun. And yeah, just like a whole weekend of just kind of nice togetherness moments. And, for me, like, I like my Valentine's Day to be about kind of lots of different kinds of love. So it was nice to do something with my family, something with JJ, and something with friends. That felt really good.
That's so beautiful. I love that for you.
So, listeners, if you want to tell us what you did for Valentine's Day, we'd love to see you in the comments on Substack. But for now, I think, should we just transition into our episode, Taylor? So for folks who did not catch last month's episode, we're changing up our format a bit in 2026. And we're each going to share something that grabbed our attention and something that we gave our attention to and over the past month. So typically, these are often things we've sent to each other. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's a surprise. But we're going to focus on what's something that like really sort of took us in, something unexpected that grabbed our attention, and then something that we really chose to spend time with, something we gave that attention to. So, Taylor, do you want to kick us off by telling us what grabbed your attention in February?
Yes, I do. And I want to say first that there were a lot of heinous, evil, vomit and anxiety inducing things that grabbed my attention in the past month. And I just don't have it. I was telling Amelia before this, I just don't have it in me to have a critical conversation about it. I think there are a lot of other people who are adding to this conversation. I chose to do a lighter hearted thing that grabbed my attention because that's what my nervous system needed this month. So it's not that I am.
Blue has some feelings about that.
Yeah. So it's not that I am not aware of what is happening or attuned to it. At some points, I'm probably too attuned to it. But I wanted to choose something, I don't know if joyful is the word, but something else that grabbed my attention, which is Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter soft launching the new era for what we presume to be Act 3, which is rumored to be this rock album. And first, I'm just curious, Amelia, are you even aware of her soft launching her new era?
No. I am aware that there's going to be a third act that we think will be the rock album in the Renaissance Cowboy Carter insert next title here trilogy, but I had no clue any of this was soft launched.
Okay. So essentially, what has happened, and I inserted this into our Notion, the Instagram post, because you obviously will not see them. We have Beyonce with a bob, which may or may not have to do with the next album. But then she posted in her cute little bob, she's also doing a lot of like leather alligator things that could be associated with rock, but her own spin on it. We have like this olive green leather coat and then this rich brown espresso type coat. Maybe not espresso. It doesn't matter. A brown leather type coat. And she's holding a telephone. What does that remind you of when you see Beyonce and hear the word telephone?
Obviously, her amazing song with Lady Gaga.
Exactly. Which they have had some whispers saying that they're going to follow that up. If anyone remembers the music video, at the end, I'm pretty sure it says, "To be continued." It's 2026.
Time to continue.
Maybe it's now. So this is something that grabbed my attention because I am still on social media, but I just don't spend very much time on Instagram anymore. And this is something I completely would have missed if not for people on Threads being like, okay, we've got Beyonce with the bob. We've got Beyonce with a telephone. Get your bank accounts ready. And I find the culture of eras to be so interesting. Eras is something that Beyonce has done. Taylor Swift famously had a tour all about eras, but also you see it with most artists. There's this idea, and if you have ever seen on social media, like so-and-so archived all their posts, or so-and-so changed their profile picture, new era loading. And there's something exciting to me, maybe intriguing about the idea of era culture for musicians, but also beyond. How attuned do you feel to this idea of eras for musicians?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with Taylor Swift's eras. I did go to the Eras tour, and I have watched the documentary show, and I think even rewatched the concert once. So from that perspective, I feel pretty familiar. As you were talking, I started thinking, though, of like Picasso's blue period, right? Like we've had artists for centuries who have these sort of different eras of their work, if we think of it that way. I'm sure we could look at so many different, I'm sure Da Vinci had different eras. Actually, I know, like we don't call them that, but I think about different sort of aesthetics, expressive modes, how they change over time. Obviously, since I'm not on social media, I don't think I'm tracking the eras as they are loading, as you put it. Like, that's not something I know is happening very often until, like, there's actually an album or a book or something new that's come through. But the other thing I think about, though, with this, and I'm curious what you think, like, I feel like I remember Taylor Swift pretty clearly speaking about, and perhaps Beyonce has said something similar, I don't know, like the way that artists are forced to reinvent themselves to stay relevant, like particularly the way that women have to do this over and over again and like become entirely new versions. So for me with eras, I'm always kind of holding on to like it's exciting and also like is there a demand in it of like the pace of like capitalism and culture or something here that I should have questions about, should question myself? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Hmm. I will be honest, I do not pay much attention to Taylor Swift, despite my dad very sweetly asking me, like, did you hear about this Taylor Swift thing? Because I used to like her when I was 15, and he just is
Never updated.
yeah. I've tried to let him know a couple times. Oh, not someone I listen to really anymore. I do try. She's just not particularly for me, and that is okay. She's for billions of people. Um, anyway, I had not heard her say this idea of reinvention. I I have to pause and consider that because for me, I find the idea of reinvention and eras so freeing as someone who, before we started recording, I told you about this whole project that I'm launching next month that was not at all that something I planned to do as I am a month into this part-time job at a startup. That was again not at all what I planned to do. Like I reinvent at a level that it's like hard for me to comprehend my reinvention, let alone communicate it to other people. And so I find it exciting that reinvention is so accepted in the music industry. But what I'm hearing from you is it intrinsic motivation to reinvent themselves, or is it something they feel like they have to do? And that's probably the difference between it feeling really freeing and empowering versus it feeling like an obligation. So yeah, I guess I would be curious to hear what their opinions and perspectives are on it. The other thing that I will say is like I'm thinking of, again, particularly women, a Miley Cyrus, a Hilary Duff, who is having her comeback. I don't even know if you've tracked that. Like,
I know she has a new album coming out, like right when this episode releases.
when someone views you, and by someone I mean the public views you in a certain category, they view you as only a rapper or they view you as a child star, you often have to launch a new era just to provide a forcing function for people to see you differently, which again isn't necessarily empowering, but it is a tool that I've seen people use. So as I'm spewing things aloud, I'm realizing, I guess, I could stand to do more reflection on the motivations for the reinvention and the era's loading. And for me, my motivation is often self-expression. But for other people, if they have different motivations, I could see how it could be limiting.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of your reinventions. I always refer to you as probably the most prolific person I know because of how much you create and express and explore. And I know that you've been on a journey of sort of embracing that as your superpower over the past, I mean, as long as we've been friends, honestly, and resisting being like kept in certain boxes or categories by yourself or by other people in that process. So yeah, I think there's so much beauty in reinvention. I think there's beauty in allowing and inviting ourselves to change and to express. And I think I was just trying to like very briefly Google, like, did Taylor Swift say this? I'm realizing it is like an op-ed about her, so I don't think she said it. We can link it in the show notes. It's called Taylor Swift and the Sparkling Trap of Constant Reinvention. And I think that that headline just really stuck in my brain for the piece of like, oh yeah, like what is, and like, and thinking too about what you said around like people like soft launching a new era by like totally erasing their Instagram account, or like when we build reinvention into these very solidified PR cycles, and how does that shift its function? And I think that it's a both and. I think that like we can have these like beautiful personal shifts, and we can also look at like who has to reinvent to stay quote unquote relevant. Because something else I've done a lot over the past few years is like go to these concert tours with my mom and see bands like Journey, like bands who've been performing the same, like stadium bands who've been performing the same set for decades. And then I think of like, and they're almost all men. That's what I've noticed. Like it's not often that women get to do that. Or the women we have seen, like we went and saw Shania Twain actually twice in 1 year, last year, 2 years ago. But like her whole set is based on like her reinvention and her like new self that she's premiering, even when she does perform some of her old singles and things within that. So I think it definitely left me with a sort of sense of like, who gets their stuff, like whose artistic creations get to be timeless and they can just like do them again and again and again, and who has to reinvent to stay quote unquote relevant. And also like Taylor Swift and Beyonce are billionaires and like they don't have to do this anymore. So I assume there's some degree of them wanting to, and my personal take on it.
Yeah. That's a whole other conversation, because I'm like them wanting to, but also is there a certain amount of pathology in it? Like of just, I see both Taylor Swift and Beyonce doing this to different degrees. And I say this as someone who really appreciates and has lots of things that I admire about Beyonce, but it's just like, do we really need all of these limited edition vinyls? Do we really need this different colorway? Both of these artists have a level of obsession for external validation. I wrote a whole piece about it for Beyonce in relation to her Alligator Tears piece, where it's just like, chill. As someone who is a Capricorn moon, a Virgo rising, a Sagittarius sun, I get the desire to constantly be learning and growing and achieving, but maybe also just go to therapy and like put your feet in the sand and jump in the nearest lake to you. Like, it is okay. So again, not a therapist, not trying to diagnose anything, but person to person, as someone who has some overlapping traits to these people, I do wonder how much of it is just desire and how much of it is, well, I've achieved all of this, but if I get this thing that, like the one thing that I haven't gotten yet, then what? I don't even know what. You have like more money than you and your kids and their kids could spend. I did not expect to go on that soapbox, but yeah, that's another thing that I think about specifically when it comes to those women as artists.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that something I've noticed on such a smaller scale in my own work is that like pacing is really important. And like when I pick up the pace, I notice that I start just maintaining a faster pace. So like this year with my podcasting, I started the year with a podcast season that was 5 episodes in 5 days. And then I got used to working at that fast clip. And then when I started my new season, it's like 3 episodes a week now, just because I like kept creating, like, and I'm now having to ask myself, like a month and a half into that, like, can I maintain this? Like, I'm getting tired. How do I shift out of that gear? Like I've been thinking of it a little bit like gears of a car. It's like once you shift up into a new gear, you can just keep running that way. And then it also takes time to downshift. And so I wonder at the scale of their celebrity, like what downshifting is available to them. They built such engines around their careers, right? You know, they employ all these people, so many people. Like, I truly can't even imagine, right? Like, I can't actually imagine what it's like to be one of them. But I'm with you on, like, I would love what a slowed down example of their lives looks like. But yeah, so all of that said, are you excited about Beyonce's new era? What do you think is coming? How do we feel about the alligator coats and the bob?
The bob looks great. I think a lot of people are going to be getting bobs this year. I say that as someone whose hair has never really been longer than shoulder length. So if my hair is down, it is in a bob. Yeah, I'm curious the way that she's going to make rock her own, because I think previously she had some video and she rode out on a motorcycle, which is more traditional rock imagery. And so seeing this, the leather coats, but there's a certain, the colors of it are not just like the black skull and crossbones look of rock. Also, especially the first one, and I wonder if we saw her standing in this brown coat, almost has a 70s aesthetic to it, which is tying some of the Renaissance theme to it. So I'm super excited about it. I feel like I have learned about Black history and music history through these other two albums, and I already know how there just wouldn't be rock music. There wouldn't be what we call rock music without Black people, without blues and soul and our instrumentation. And so the reclamation is something I'm excited about. And I went down this whole rabbit hole when Kendrick's album came out, but I was thinking about it as well in context to Cowboy Carter. There's this concept in academia, specifically in education, called public pedagogy. And it's about how these things that are consumed by the masses end up teaching us and getting us to engage. And so even though I'm in a PhD program, I'm so excited to be a student, not just of Beyonce, but of American and Black American history vis-a-vis this album. And also, like, I want Hayley Williams. I want to collab with Hayley Williams. I want Brittany from Alabama Shakes to be on it. I have a little bit of a wish list of who I want to see in this rock album, and I'm hoping at least some of those dreams come true. So I'm pumped, and I'm wondering when it's going to come out. I feel like she has a thing for fours, so maybe April, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm also very excited for it. I feel like these images are very like Jimi Hendrix is the vibe to me. And I think that would be really interesting. I would love to get like, I'm pretty sure Beyonce has sampled Sister Rosetta Tharpe before, but feels like more of that could belong on this rock album. And like you, I'm just excited to learn from it. I love how she pulls artists of all eras into these albums, and I really I always love listening like to the Beyonce album and then also finding the playlist of like, here's everything that was sampled, here's all these other artists that were sampled or featured, and like I learn just as much from those. I feel like there has to be a time when she'll just I mean, maybe she won't, but I would love some like, I feel like if Taylor Swift could put out that like very silly Target only book that had nothing in it from her tour, I want Beyonce's like books that have all the pictures of these people and the lyrics and the images and the essays. Like, they're such dense texts. I would love them in different medium. I want films. I want books. I want even more than the albums.
That would be such a great collab between Beyonce and Solange, because Solange has just done incredible archival work. And so I could see them collabing, and then Saint Heron coming out with a book. From my lips to goddess's ears, please make this a thing that happens.
Yeah. I'm thinking like Kimberly Drew and Jay Wortham's like Black Futures Project looping in, like that's what we need in 2026 is like that, all of that magic. That would be amazing.
This is reminding me that I am doing an anthology project that I don't know if I told you about.
No, I don't know about it.
For another day.
Dear listener, a lot of me and Taylor's friendship is us chatting about random things and Taylor being like, did you know I'm working on a book? Did you know I built a new company? It's great. This is what I mean when I say she's my most prolific friend, and I love it. So beautiful. Well, okay, the thing that grabbed my attention in the past month, I like don't even want to bring it up now because one, it is a bummer, and two, it's like by a white dude billionaire, which feels wrong to even bring into this space, but I guess we'll go there since I went there. So the thing that grabbed my attention this month is, let me tell you how I found it. So one of my most, I think, nerdy habits is I like to go to different libraries around Lincoln and just like walk through them and see how they do their displays and like what books they have out to read. And there's one that's like a 15-minute drive away that whatever librarian does their curation, I'm obsessed with it. Like they always pull out such good books. Every time I go over there and I just like walk through, they have this big main hall and it's just full of tables where they've curated books by different themes, but that somehow are relevant to like things in my life or that I want to learn about. So I did that. I think the last weekend of January, I ended up at that library and I like walked through the tables and I was looking at books and I picked up, they had a whole book of new nonfiction with red covers, which are a whole table of those. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I picked up this one book called The Stronger Sex that I'm really enjoying. I forget the author. We'll link it in the show notes, but it's about strength and the ways that we conceive of strength and power, particularly between like female athletes and male athletes, problematizing that through sex and gender, of course, in the book as well. But like, it's really interesting. Basically, the whole book is this argument for like a feminist argument about why men are not the stronger sex, or they only are the stronger sex if you only consider strength in this super narrow way in which perhaps quote unquote male bodies are better than women's bodies at certain things. So it's a really interesting book. I'm enjoying that. All of this is a lead up to say the thing that I actually got thoroughly pulled down a rabbit hole this month was this other nonfiction book with a red cover called How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle by Ray Dalio. He is a billionaire, like venture capitalist hedge fund guy. He used to run Bridgewater. I think he founded it and used to run it. And I had seen that he like spoke at Davos and had this like pretty inflammatory things to say there. And so I saw his book and I was like, am I going to read this? Am I going to spend time with a billionaire white man this month? And I picked it up and I did. And I have to say, Taylor, it was bleak. This book was so bleak. And it really paints this picture of like an upcoming market crash in the US and with many of our like major trade allies. And he sort of tells the story through cycles from previous centuries of basically all of these like colonial empires and how they rise and they build markets. And then those markets inevitably kind of like crash and have like major corrections is some of the language he uses for it. And in that book, and then in press he's done more recently, he was in Munich for this whole like, I don't even know what to call it, global conference of the U.S. saying weird things about how we're not friends with anybody. That's how it felt from the outside press. He was there saying that like things are not going to go well. And it really just like, it was kind of a spiral for me of reading this and being like, all right, what he's saying, this person who has made billions of dollars in the stock market and through like betting on global economies, is that within the next, upcoming years, he thinks that there's going to be like a major correction and things are going to change. And the things that I've always been told I can rely on, like stock market goes up, are going to be pretty drastically shifted, like much more than a 2008 recession, much more like a 1920s, 30s depression. And that was a real bummer. I feel like I lost like 2 whole weeks to just processing that book in the past month. And it also helped me make sense of some of the things I didn't really understand why Trump is doing them, like trying so hard to take over the Fed and things. I learned a lot in the book about like fiat currencies versus reserve currencies and why it's so important to hold debt in your own currency. It just like kind of wraps in all these things I knew from disparate places into one very coherent argument about like the national and global economies. And in the book, he doesn't offer, like, and he's looking at the level of global economy. So he offers nothing to the individual reader who's not a billionaire. He also takes no responsibility for how people like him have caused a lot of these problems. And so I just want to say, like, it's really infuriating at times to read him write about it. Like, oh, this just happened. It was inevitable. And I'm like, no, sir. Like, you are the big part of the problem here. But what I took away is that it's a good time to get out of debt or to not be in debt because it's really challenging if there's a market crash and you owe banks a lot of money. It doesn't go well. Things will probably just keep getting more expensive. So the more stuff I can have on hand that I need, probably the better. In case I think, more inflation, things cost more money. Might as well buy an extra box of pasta at the grocery store now because it could cost more in a year. Probably will, as we've seen grocery prices grow up so much in the past few years. And Otherwise, that's about all I'm doing with it. And I'm trying to kind of, I don't know. Do you ever read things where you're like, wow, this is really fucked, and then now is my time to just forget about that so I can go back to my life and just have to do the stuff I have to do? Because that's kind of how I feel about reading this whole book in February.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm like, do I want to read it? Do I not want to read it?
Do not recommend.
I have had a sense for a few years that things are going to crash, and there's things that I listen to. Ed Zitron has a podcast. It's very like a white man is yelling at you.
I have feelings about him too, but I will not
But
go on that tangent.
he talks a lot about how there's going to be a crypto crash. And this is something that if you watched the Super Bowl, you likely noticed just how many things were about crypto and betting and
AI.
GLP again, and then kind of crash. And now the people who are doing crypto are doing AI. Yeah, there is this sense from my perspective that like it's gonna fall out, the bottom's gonna fall out, the wheels are gonna fall off sometime soon. I also, yeah, when Trump got elected, I went into a spiral about prepping, and I asked you, I was like, if shit really hits the fan, can Matt and I come to Nebraska? Like,
You can.
it just seems like it might be safer. Now I have a friend with parents who have a bunch of acres in Southern Illinois, so that's our new thing where she's like, for real, you can come down here if you need to, but these are the types of contingency plans that I'm thinking of. Even on, I love Focus Mate. It is how I've written a book and done so many of my prolific things is through body doubling with other people. And I was body doubling on Saturday morning, actually on Valentine's Day. Wait, was it? It doesn't matter. I was body doubling with someone doing homework for my PhD, and he was based in Greece, and he was asking me about my PhD because he's doing a master's and would love to do his PhD in the States. And he's like, but I'm kind of nervous about it. And I was just trying to keep it light, and I was saying, yeah, I don't blame you for being nervous. I'm a little nervous too, haha. And he's like, yeah, I'm not nervous about my student visa getting revoked. I'm nervous that I would be trapped in the United States during a civil war.
All right. Got it.
That's true. And the fact that this person in Greece is seeing this from afar and saying, yeah, that seems like a real possibility that I have to consider for when I'm applying to PhD programs. There was something about that that just really hit me, and again reinforced this idea that I feel like I need to be prepping for potential financial collapse, for potentially a civil war, or civil unrest at the very least, for all of these different things. And I, as someone who has diagnosed issues with anxiety, has had to find the balance of preparing but not going crazy. So if I can just offer to people what has been helpful for me, we don't typically use bottled water, but when we went to Costco one time, we just got a case of bottled water that we have. We have some, like a charger that is solar powered that can charge our phones, but also has enough to be able to charge computers if it needed to, and it's just always there. Something more recently that I did is just put all of our important papers in a place that we can really easily grab if we needed to and head out the door. And then some things we got, like some water purification stuff, those foil blankets that you see in movies. We got some of those, just some like basic things. We probably spent no more than $200 on it. And then to your point about going to Costco, since we already have a Costco membership, we just got more comfortable buying things in bulk. So we could get rice from our normal grocery store, but why not just buy a bigger thing of rice that we're going to continue to use, but also, God forbid something happens, now we have rice in the house. Same with canned goods and things like that. So playing this balance of being prepared, but also not being a pessimist. I think it's like the difference between being a nihilist and an absurdist, but you can correct me as a philosopher. But very basically, like, I many times feel like nothing has meaning unless we give it meaning. And so trying to focus on what is within my control and what I want to give meaning to in my life. That was a lot of things. And now you have insight into my anxiety that's been in the background for about a year.
Yeah, I mean, I share a lot of that, honestly. I think 2 summers ago, I did a lot of emergency prep stuff. And there's a whole section of our basement now that has all of our go bag stuff, all of our camping equipment. Like, I did a whole emergency assessment of where we live to figure out, like, are we more likely to have to leave our home or to have to stay in our home for an extended period? And at this stage, like, at any point, JJ and I could be home for at least a week without having to leave, like, with no notice. And we could also leave the house within 15 minutes, pets included. Everything is packed, ready to go. Nothing has to be gathered. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that, like, the place to start always, like, the way I like to navigate this when I get stressed, when I get anxious, when I feel myself spiral, is to step into, like, practical actions I can take. I think, like, a go bag is a great first step. Then it's like 3 days of shelter in place. Could you do that? At this stage, I'm closer to, like, 3 weeks. And honestly, I'm trying to build to 3 months, especially because a big focus of mine is, like, our garden for the upcoming year. I spent the past 4 years trying to learn how to grow things behind my house and it's going pretty well. And now I'm, like, learning how to store the food and, like, do things like that. So I always remind myself that, like, it does take time. Like, it feels very urgent when I read a book like this and I'm like, oh, okay. And one of the things I liked about this book, I will say, is, like, it gave me a very clear, like, intellectual understanding of why all this stuff that we've been feeling, like, actually fits into a very coherent reason that things could collapse. And I was like, oh, okay. But then also, like, seeing that was a little overwhelming. I don't know what's more overwhelming, like, putting all the puzzle pieces together or just having a lot of puzzle pieces. It's kind of felt like the difference. It's like the book kind of put that puzzle together that I've been gathering the pieces for a while, and I don't know which I preferred. But yeah, I like those practical actions. And we can put some stuff in the show notes. I have, like, a favorite piece written by Margaret Killjoy about, like, how to put together a go bag that I'm always sending around. And then some of the bigger picture stuff I've stepped into too, like, how am I thinking about our investments if I think about the market this way? What is happening? Those are sort of newer questions I'm asking. But yeah, now that I tanked the mood, all of that will be linked in the show notes. It's very real. And I don't know, I don't have anything profound to say about, but as you started us with, like, it's this dissonance between we want to look at what Beyonce's doing and also, like, maybe the economy is going to collapse. And we're just doing, like, both of those literally every day on our phones and computers in 2026.
If I can just offer, like, one, I don't know if it's hopeful, but perspective shifting. So I'm at the tail end of Small is Beautiful, Economics as If People Mattered. And something that I keep coming back to, this is by Schumacher, who's an economist. And I think I've mentioned it to you certainly before. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the podcast, but he does a lot of reframing of our idea of scale. And it struck me that when you were talking about Diallo, he's thinking about global markets and all of these things. But the person to person, our ecosystem of our neighborhood or our block, or even for me, my building, probably is more resilient than the global market. And so that just gave me a lot of hope and thinking, where do I want to invest my attention and my efforts? And yeah, my hope. So I've been thinking about that with context to how big do I want to scale my businesses, but also what does economics look like in my day-to-day? And it's just been helpful and grounding. And I read 2 or 3 essays this morning and I felt an exhale. Like, the local is still going to be around.
Yeah, I think a lot about what I have to offer my local community. And, like, preparedness can be one of those things. Being a person who has food when it's really hard to get food from the grocery store, that's a benefit you can bring to your local community. What I keep coming back to is, what are the things I can do now that just, like, are net positive to my current life? Like me having 20 boxes of pasta in my basement, as I do after our 97-cent pasta sale last weekend, like, actually, that's great. That just means I don't have to go buy pasta for a while. Like, it's just here, like, there's no downside to me building this skill. Me learning how to garden, that's just a net positive to my daily life. So I try to think of this skill building as like just beneficial to me and the life that I want to have, as well as things that can benefit my local community, like were more to happen. Like we live in such a globalized world, I think we do have to be tracking on both levels, but I think when the overwhelm at the big scale is too much, returning to like the things we can just feel that more immediate impact is also like an antidote that I come back to again and again. So yeah, those are the things that grabbed our attention this month. And let's turn to the things that we gave our attention to. So Taylor, what did you give your attention to in February?
I gave my attention to a couple of web series. So I had my niece over, and she is 19, for a lot of reasons, has a pretty short attention span. And so I felt like web series would be the perfect route for us to feel like we were going on a journey, but the intervals were short enough. And so what we watched were a newer one called The Comic Shop that just came out within the past year. It is showrun by a black, I'll say a black queer woman. It is a workplace comedy, and I may have mentioned it briefly in our 2025 year in media. It's so fun, and it hits all of the notes if you like a workplace comedy. It hits all of those notes, but it's just in short doses. It's a really diverse cast. I also love seeing Black people get to be nerdy and not fit into so many of the tropes that they're pigeonholed into. So they don't have to be the athlete or the criminal or the too cool for school person. They can just be really excited about Dungeons and Dragons or a comic or whatever it might be. So I genuinely enjoyed the show a lot. My niece loved it. Like, out loud laughs multiple times, so invested in the stories. It was my second time watching it. It was something that Matt and I watched as it was coming out week by week. And so it was fun to see it all back to back to back. I'm also really intrigued about it just from the model of making things yourself. There's many people have heard of independent films or independent Hollywood. There's a new movement that's called Nandi, or non-dependent, where it's really like we're just going to build our own architecture and ecosystem that can plug into Hollywood if we want it to, but is not dependent on it at all. It made me think of, I don't know if you watched the original series that turned into Insecure, but for so long the playbook has been like, if I do a web series, I do it, I get Hollywood's attention, and then I parlay that into a deal in Hollywood. I'm curious to see if that's the route that will be taken, or if there is a new alternative outside of the ecosystem altogether. The other series that we watched was Black Girl in a Big Dress, and this came out several years ago. It is about this Black woman who is in a different nerd culture. She's really into Austen balls and like getting dressed up as if she were in the Jane Austen era and doing all of the eating the tea cakes and those things. And she's doing this as a Black woman. And so it's about her ideas of romance and getting caught up in this fantasy world of Austen balls, while also trying to navigate her romantic life in the real world in modern times. And so it's just a fun little show. Those episodes are even shorter. Some of the episodes are like 5 minutes or less, whereas The Comic Shop is more 10, 15 minutes. And similar things, just loving seeing Black people get to be super specific things that I don't know how this show or where this show would show up if they were trying to shop it around to a network. The other thing, because this came out a while ago, is it was fun to just look back and see, where is this woman now? And I talked about how so often web series were made to parlay into something else. She has written on iCarly and for these big streamers and names. So it worked for her. It was also nominated for a Webby Award. But yeah, I'm curious to see for this newer creator who is doing the web series playbook, how she will do it on her terms and maybe in a more non-D term.
That's so interesting. I'm excited to watch these. And it's really reminding me of, did you ever watch the Brown Girls series? It was a web series put out by Open TV. It was very Chicago based, in like 2017, probably. Does this ring any bells for you?
I know Open TV. I have not seen Brown Girls, so I feel like I need to add it to my list.
Yeah, I'll send you the link and we'll put it in the show notes too. It was written by Fatima Asghar, who is like a Jamila Woods collaborator and author now, and I think filmmaker as well. But I remember seeing this in 2017 and being obsessed, both because it's like really good and because the Chicago locations just felt so like the places that we were going to in 2017. It's really wonderful, and it feels like of the non-D movement, even though I don't think that was happening at the same way at that time. But I can't wait to watch these. I just love independent or non-dependent film, comics, anything, as you know. My obsession with independent media goes pretty deep in my life, so I can't wait to check these out, and I think you'll really like Brown Girls. Highly recommend.
I'm so excited to watch it. It's also just like I'm getting more into YouTube in general. And so there's something nice about I can put this up on the big screen. It doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. And it's still entertaining and beautiful. And I know I just have such a clearer sense of where the money's going when I watch it too. So that is exciting. I'm glad to add another one to my watch list for YouTube. I'm still learning the vocab.
Yeah, I like YouTube a lot and have gotten more into it in the past year, and I have such mixed feelings, right? Because it's like so many independent creators. It does feel like so much of it more of a direct connection to creators than Hollywood does. And also now I've been watching like certain YouTube niches, like particularly BookTube, for about 2 years. And so I've also now started to see like the panic cycles that happen when YouTube changes their ad guidelines or when the algorithm shifts. And like that I will say I don't love. Like witnessing that on there with the creators, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like I remember there was a whole thing last year where YouTube said they would only put ads in videos when there was like an obvious break. And so all these creators I watched started just putting like sort of like chapter titles screens internally in their videos, but just a lot of them just like while they were still talking, they would just like put up a blank screen with a title on it to try to get YouTube to put the ad there. And I was always like, what a weird like content determined by platform thing happening right now. But yeah, I still love it. So yes, add to your watch later list or to a playlist of your choosing.
Yeah. And the other thing I will just add about YouTube is Hollywood is freaking out about YouTube. Speaking of other podcasts where it's just like white men yelling, but sometimes it's oddly soothing to me. Like I will listen to The Town sometimes when I'm falling asleep and be like, okay, Matthew Bellany, like you kind of get on my nerves, but I want to fall asleep because he's getting on my nerves. They have been talking recently about how everyone's trying to compete with YouTube because it's taking more and more share of people's watch time and what that means. And so I'm curious, is Google through YouTube going to become this new Hollywood where the creators still aren't getting the power that they were hoping to have? And so it's not a new question to ask. It's just something that I am more aware of as I start to spend a little bit more time on YouTube.
Yeah, and I think that's where things like Open TV are so interesting, right? Where it's like, oh, that they're trying to be a different type of platform for a different type of TV content. So finding those like hubs, or the non-D movement itself, like finding these hubs of people just like totally thinking differently about this, not just creating like a copy paste alternate of the existing system. I think that is really exciting. And I do not listen to The Town except when they like bash it on Vibe Check. Then I will go listen. I just really love how I just feel like Matthew Bellamy and Scott Galloway just get constant like they show up as like the podcasters that the vibe checkers love to hate, and I clock it every time, and then I try to go figure out what they're doing. That's my entree into those worlds.
Scott Galloway, I am a person, you know this about me. Like, I can see the good in a lot of people. I cannot stand Scott Galloway. I tried to listen to his podcast with him and Kara Swisher, and just the level of like self-aggrandizing, I could not handle. What I do like about The Town is they often have guests. And so he's in conversation with someone else. And it's just interesting because like I believe a lot in looking for parallels across industries. And so I like to listen to industry podcasts about music or about television and movies or about these other industries and see how that can inform how I'm thinking about it. So I'll tap in and tap out depending on what they're talking about, but I feel like it just makes me more savvy as a business person and someone who wants to create things in the world to understand what trends are, what is working, what is not working, what do I want to participate in, what might I want to buck, and also what is happening over there that no one else where I am is talking about that I could be like innovating, but really I'm just integrating something else interesting or pushing back against something that people haven't started to talk about in my industry yet. So hot tip for people, but that's how I try and not stay ahead of the curve, but just am able to do a lot of things, some that are similar and some that are different, is because I'm constantly tracking different industries.
It's a kind of way of doing like interdisciplinary business, I suppose, but just thinking about like what's working here that could be working over here. And it is one of my favorite things. Like I feel like my work can get a little like myopic and like online business world, but it's why I like talking to you about the things you're seeing outside of that. I like talking to my friend Grace about her husband's construction business, which works so differently than anything I do. And it's sort of it's like just we build resilience when we connect across silos, I think. And so like breaking out of those silos and finding each other and then having conversations about the ways we do things, I just find it always exciting. I like love, even in things I don't care about, I will often listen to a podcast about like the behind the scenes of how the work works. I'm like, yeah, tell me how you like, I can't think of an example right now, but like I would love to find a podcast that like really explains to me like, how do you do your shift schedule to run a restaurant? Like, I think of this too when I read novels. Like, I love novels where like the characters have like clear careers and jobs, and like we learn a lot about their job in the novel. Like, that's always fun for me when I guess just like how work works is interesting to me inherently. So, yeah, I love all of this.
How work works. I feel like that's a podcast name I just want you to pin for a future podcast where you could interview people from different industries and just get them to tell you how their work works.
Yeah, I did years ago, like help somebody launch a show similar to that. I don't remember her name now, but she like traveled and worked with Ren fairs. And so she was like so deep in that world. And she did interview people who had like very different careers that I had never thought about. And it was fun to hear as I was working on the show with her. I'll have to find it and see if that show is still up. We haven't connected in a couple years, but yeah, I think for some reason that's like the way that like the sort of how stuff works world is not always inherently interesting to me. How work works, always interesting to me.
Yeah, because it's the people element of it, and there's always story to it, where how stuff works can be a lot more abstract, and not that they don't weave story into it, but there's so much more of the people, which I think is what you and I are both interested in when we have conversations about work. I also have said this in my career coaching space, but I love using career as an entree into my coaching, because when you talk about career, you pretty quickly get into talking about values and insecurities and all these other pieces. You think you're talking about work, and then all of a sudden I mean, people cry when I'm coaching all the time, not because I'm making them cry, but because we're touching some tender pieces.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that comes into our work, and there's a lot that's at stake in our work. And it's also why I like focusing my work around like self-employment, because I'm really interested. I like working with people who, for whatever reason, want to like take the reins on their own work in a certain sense. Like I like that choice is always really interesting to me, and it happens in many ways, and that's not always a choice. Sometimes it happens out of necessity, but yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe I should talk about what I'm giving my attention to now. Should we transition?
Please do.
So it's funny. The same weekend I was reading the Ray Diallo book, I was also watching a bunch of films from 2026 Sundance. And so I want to talk about just some things like what I've been giving my attention to is like movies and then some very frivolous television shows that I'll share. I think maybe part of the reason that book hit so hard now as I'm like saying this out loud is I was reading that book that weekend while JJ and I are watching all these Sundance films. For folks who don't know, Sundance shares the movies online. You can buy a ticket to watch like individual films. It's not cheap. It's like $35 a film because they're all independent and they're trying to get money to these creators. But it's one of my favorite things to do every year. I like look forward to it. I go through the schedule, and not all of them are streaming, but the ones I can stream, I stream. And so we watched a bunch of different movies, and watching them, it was very obvious that like there is a lot of hard shit happening in the world. Like, and more than in past years, it was hard to find things that felt like moments of like levity or lightness. Like these films were heavy, and we picked heavy ones, I think, as well. So one we watched was called How to Divorce During the War. And it was this relationship drama set in the, like with the political backdrop of the war, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And it's this Lithuanian couple that has decided to get divorced the day before Russia invades. And they're like trying to navigate this divorce, like while all of these Ukrainian refugees are coming to Lithuania. Watching that movie, I also learned that there's this like tiny little piece of land that is a part of Russia that's like shares a border with Lithuania, even though Lithuania doesn't share a border with Russia. Like it's just this little thing inside of Europe that is Russia. Like things that I just don't know. That I like when I was watching this movie, like looked up because I kept being like, how are they in Lithuania looking at the border? Like, how does this make any sense? So that one was really interesting. Again, it's called How to Divorce During the War. We also watched, like, frankly, a brutal documentary called American Doctor that follows 3 U.S. doctors into Gaza and like the work that they're doing there and have done there. And it was this like would not recommend watching it unless you're prepared to just like cry and like sit with the devastation and brutality. It was really hard to look at and look away from. I'm hoping that gets distribution soon so more people can see it in the US. It was like such an important film. And then we got tickets to see the short films this year. So we watched a bunch of like the midnight spooky scary shorts, including one called Homemade Gatorade that was like my favorite. It was so weird. It's an animated short. I doubt that you can see it anywhere else, but I'll see if I can find a link at least to the creator of it. We also watched one called The Worm that was really weird. Other one we saw that is my favorite that we watched was called The Friend's House is Here, and it's set in Iran, and it followed this like underground theater group who they are an underground theater group in real life, but this is a fictionalized film about sort of some of their experiences. And it follows this group, in Iran, you have to have permits to create art there and to like be an artist. And so they're putting on these shows that are not sanctioned by the government. And then the director of the troupe gets arrested and they have to put together the money to get her out of jail, and her friend who had like just gotten this visa to leave the country. And it was like such a narrow, impossible window of like, you have a week, used the money from her flight to get her friend out of jail. And like, again, it's a fictionalized version, but like these things are happening. And then I was watching this at that, like some of the height of the protests in Iran. So everything just felt so present on so many levels as I was doing this. I want to link all the films in the show notes because they were so brilliant and amazing. And they were made by such just like brave artistic visionaries. And then after I watched all of that, I read the book, I was like, okay, now I shall just go deep into Traitors. And JJ and I have just been watching Traitors, and that's what I'm giving my attention to. And frankly, I'm really loving it. This season has some great people. It has Monet Exchange, whom I love. It has Dorinda from Real Housewives, who's the like, I'll tell you how I'm doing, not doing well, bitch, meme lady. It has Tara Lipinski and Johnny, what's his name, the figure skaters. It has Colton from The Bachelor. It has Steven from Laguna Beach and One Tree Hill. Just like a lot of characters that I remember from the TV I watched growing up. And I find Traitors to be like literally the opposite of all of the stuff we've talked about loving, right? It's the opposite of independent media. It's the opposite of breaking up with Hollywood. It's the opposite of like tender, dramatic explorations through film. But I'm really enjoying that as a bit of like levity and silliness, and just watching these celebrities like get buried underground or have to jump out of random boxes and do weird stuff as they lie to each other. It's like a certain kind of nonsense that I really needed after all of the heaviness of the year and my own media choices so far.
Are you caught up on Traitors?
Yes, I am.
So I finally started watching it because I felt like I needed something lighthearted. And even friends that I have that don't necessarily like reality TV, like the Traitors. And so I decided to give it a try. My whole Threads algorithm is so much critique and yeah, of the Traitors. I find it, yes, both very fun, and I'm going to spoil this if you have not watched the most up to date. So we're recording this on February 16th. If you have not watched all the episodes before February 16th, pause and fast forward. It does seem like such a reflection, though, of unconscious bias and
100%.
Conscious bias and all of these things. Like, immediately, all of the Black people are voted off. You have Tiffany, who's this brilliant Black woman who they just like are, to me, intimidated by. Then Dorinda, I don't know if you probably have not seen this because Ron has mostly been talking about it, but apparently Dorinda said some very biased, potentially racist things to him that were just not shown because they were off camera. So it looks like he's kind of blowing up at her, but it's because of all these other things that happened that were not shown because they didn't have to do with gameplay. Kristen, the chef, I don't know if you caught the moment, but the internalized misogyny of being like, well, I don't think it could just be two housewives. I think there has to be some boy energy there, implying that women cannot be strategic and there has to be a man there to be strategic. Also, apparently Colton has like stalking allegations. So there, and then Michael Rappaport. I don't know why they gave that man a platform. I'm so glad that he got voted off. I wish he would have gotten voted off sooner. But it is both enjoyable and also deeply frustrating. And I've seen people draw parallels to being like, this is what it's like to be a Black woman in corporate, or this is what it's like to be that. So it's both enjoyable and also low-key triggering because the whole game, we're saying this late if you haven't watched it, but if you have played Mafia growing up, it's essentially a televised version of Mafia with some other challenges brought in. I used to be so good at Mafia because it's all just about convincing people and working the room and swaying people towards your side. But when most of these people don't know each other, you start to see the ways that people build connection. It's also because the framework that I'm using for my dissertation is identity leadership, or the social identity theory of leadership. And so I've been reading so much about social identity and just seeing the ways that people build us and them in the absence of deep connection, which ends up being very surface level. We are housewives. We are from Drag Race. We are the gamers, they call them, the people who are coming from Survivor or Big Brother, other games, and then like race, gender, very base level connection building.
I mean, I think it's extremely interesting just to watch from the perspective of your research, because like all of the groups that form are based on these pretty like surface level identities. The show you were on, or some aspect of race, gender, or sexuality, I would say, are the things that come up over and over again. I would completely agree with this analysis. To me, this was so apparent in season 2 when Peppermint was the second person to get booted. I think that the way that they always get rid of the drag queens very early in the seasons, it just goes to show this very conscious and unconscious bias of like this belief that you're not trustworthy if you don't present gender in a way that is legible to others. Like to me, when Peppermint went out like first vote, I was like, okay, that's what we're doing here. And when I started on season 2. Monet lasted longer this season. I don't think I watched last season, which I believe had Bob the drag queen on it, so I don't know how long Bob lasted, but I completely agree with you. There's this like really weird mirroring that happens of all of the fucked up aspects of our society. But yeah, then it's like you as the viewer have to choose to name that because it's not going to be named on the show. It's like if you watch reality TV, none of these people are harmless. They all have problematic narratives or things they've done on shows or off shows that are challenging, which is maybe why I like watching them look ridiculous and do dumb things because there's like some schadenfreude in that for me. So yeah, I would say, I mean, it's just always interesting, like what is the media we can take in with our critical mind on or off, right? I think that this whole conversation actually kind of loops some of that in.
Yeah. Now I'm like, is it worth going back and watching some of the previous seasons? I just, as a rule, that's not even true. I just am selective about what reality TV I watch because I know I can get addicted to it. And so I'm like, I don't have time to get sucked into all of these worlds. Even Love is Blind, like I used to watch that every time it came out. Now I just really can't get through it. And I also just feel like the first season of Love is Blind was the best season. We got Lauren and Cameron. They're still doing great. And that's really all I needed from it. And now part of what I do like about Traitors is that even though this is about to change, but because it is mostly famous people, there's less of the, are they just on here to get famous? But apparently in the UK, it's not famous people, and they're casting for a season that's going to be not famous people. So I'll be curious about that, both from the social identity dynamics, but also, well, I just only like the first season of that, and then after that get annoyed because you can just tell everyone's trying to get as many social media followers as possible.
Yeah, it's like if you just want to watch social norms and bias in action, Traitors is a great show for you. Like the person, this is another spoiler, like the traitor who's doing the best is the generically attractive young white man snake wrangler, LOL, from Alabama. But like I was pretty locked in the very first episode when he became a traitor and he was like, I'm hard to read. Every girl I've ever dated has told me so. And I was like, yeah, I know you. The like type that is you. I know that type. And do I hate it? Yes. Do I think it's highly problematic? Yes. But again, it's like when you've experienced some of these like stereotypes or like personas, there is something interesting, I think, in that, like watching them and being affirmed in like, okay, I wasn't nuts. Like this person I dated was just like this. And now I see it happening. Like I'm realizing as I keep talking about this, and just to be clear, I don't need to justify Traitors in any way. Like if people hate it, they should hate it, and I don't even need to justify my own watching of it. But I'm like, why am I interested in this? And I think it's like more often in my art, I want to see like marginalized aspects of my identity mirrored. I want to feel that type of representation, or I want to watch things that I have no experience of and can like learn about or make visible to me through art. But sometimes in the content and the reality TV, there is something about just seeing like the shitty things about the world and being like, okay, this is real. Yeah, this is happening. Even at the height of artifice that is reality TV. It's interesting to me. Like, what do we make there? So yeah, anyway, that's my tight 10 on Traitors.
And also the outfits, and also, like you said, the ridiculous, like there's a lot to love about it. I love the way that Alan Cummings just commits to the bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does he say these things with a straight face? But it's so fun. The dramatic flair in his Scottish accent. It's both, I both side-eye it and also am giggling with glee at it. And that's kind of the world that we live in right now. We're feeling all the things, whether it is watching a reality show on television or reading a book and trying to go about our lives as we know that there's impending financial collapse. we're holding all the things.
Yeah. The spiral of the both and 2026. Beautiful. Well, Taylor, any final words for our listeners before we sign off on our February episode?
I like what you said about leaning into the both and.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open, but make sure you're finding and seeking joy as well, is how I'm feeling this year. Not looking away from it all, but also making sure I look at some really cute things sometimes, because there's a lot of that in the world too. So thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Thanks for sticking with us. We love making these episodes for you. And if you have thoughts, comments, questions, things you want to share, movies you've liked, opinions on traders, we welcome them in the comments on Substack. You can find us at thoughtofyou.substack.com or just click the link wherever you're listening to this episode. Taylor and I are actually going to see each other in person very soon. So when we next talk to you, maybe we'll remember to tell you what we did when we hung out. But also I remember when we went to Alinea and we forgot to tell everybody how that was. So who knows? But in a month or so, we'll be back on the pod feed talking to all of you. So until then, stay safe, seek joy, and know that we're thinking of you.